the shameless sister-in-law being supported by her big sister.
None of the family members sitting there were laughing, but Shun was chuckling as if he just couldn't hold it in. Is it really okay for someone to outright dismiss a stranger's income, job, or even their character? And all based on some made-up assumptions they've convinced themselves are true. I couldn't believe such a cruel thing would come from my dear sister's fiance, and I was left speechless. Instinctively, I glanced over at my sister, Sophie. Her face was filled with a level of anger I had never seen before. Next to Shun, a woman was giggling quietly. But after several seconds, Sophie took a deep breath, calmed herself, and said,
Oh, Caitlin's way richer than you know?
the truth, which Shun had never imagined, caused his expression to crumble more and more. My name is Caitlin Sullivan. I'm 40 years old and single. I live at home with my parents in Connecticut. Back in college, I shared an apartment with some friends, but after graduating, I moved back home and have been living here ever since. My friends have told me that moving out and living alone is an important life experience, but I've grown attached to a home where someone's always around. And now here I am at this age. Currently, I sell my paintings through an online store while sharing my work on social media. I rent a small studio apartment to create and showcase my art. But when it comes to living, nothing beats the comfort and peace of my family home. My sister, Sophie, is a caring and responsible person. Right after graduating from college, she landed a job at a major company and moved to New York City to live on her own. Even so, she never drifted apart from the family. She always made time to visit us, reassuring our parents. When I expressed my desire to make a living as an artist, my parents were hesitant and worried, but Sophie supported me.
It's Caitlin's life, so she should do what she loves. And if things don't work out, I'll take care of her while she job hunts.
If Sophie hadn't been there, I probably would have given up on becoming an artist. Sophie is responsible, family-oriented, and beautiful, and I adore her for it. Despite living in New York, Sophie never brought up romantic relationships. She always shared stories about her job, the great diners she found, or our next family vacation, topics that kept us all engaged and let us feel connected to her life. However, about 15 years after she started living alone, Sophie suddenly spoke up one day saying she had something important to share.
Actually, I've been dating someone with the intention of getting married. We've been together for about 2 years, and I'd like to introduce him soon.
Our parents, who had secretly hoped for their child's marriage but never voiced it, immediately brightened up.
Oh, how exciting! I can't wait to meet the man Sophie chose.
Things moved along quickly, and it was decided that the two families would meet in 6 months. When I heard from Mom that the date for the family meeting had been set, I felt nervous too. I've spent over 15 years living a quiet life at home, focusing on my art, and I haven't had many conversations with other people. I didn't want Sophie's fiance to think she had such a shabby sister. Determined to at least look presentable for the occasion, I started doing some light workouts and taking better care of my skin. One day, Sophie called me.
Hey, Caitlin, I have a little favor to ask. Is that okay?
What's up? It's rare for you to ask me for something. According to Sophie, her fiancé, Shun, said he wanted to meet me before the family meeting to get comfortable. Since we hadn't even exchanged greetings before, he said he felt nervous and uneasy about the upcoming meeting. Thinking I might ask the same if I were in his position, I agreed without hesitation. However, since he wasn't meeting my parents, the only option was to invite him to my studio. We could have gone to a nice cafe, but I worried I'd be too nervous there and leave a bad impression. So, a few days later, Sophie and Shun came to my studio. I made sure to clean as much as I could, even scrubbing the spots where oil paint had stained the floor. I also stopped working on any projects for a few days to keep the smell at bay. Art is an essential part of my life, but I wanted to prepare thoroughly since Sophie's important fiancé was visiting. Shun was the same age as Sophie, but had a clean-cut appearance that made him look a little younger. He was tall, well-dressed, and gave off the impression of someone competent at his job.
Thanks for having me today. Sorry for taking up your weekend.
No problem at all. It's my first time meeting my sister's boyfriend, so I'm happy to have you here. I'm Caitlin, Sophie's sister. I didn't think I'd get the chance to talk to you before the family meeting.
I get so nervous just thinking about the family meeting. So I talked to Sophie, and here I am. Thanks for having me.
After exchanging pleasantries at the entrance, Sophie and Shun stepped into the room.
Why? You live in a one-bedroom? And at 40?
Shun's words spilled out as soon as he entered the room. It stung a little, but I couldn't blame him. Living in this kind of space at my age probably seemed off-putting to anyone.
Caitlin doesn't live here. She's an artist and uses this space as her studio.
That's right. Sorry if it caught you off guard. The view here is great, and it gets plenty of sunlight, making it perfect as a studio.
An artist, huh?
Hearing Sophie's explanation, Shun nodded as if he'd come to understand something. His expression was tense, and I couldn't help but worry I'd left a bad impression. However, Shun suddenly lightened up, and we enjoyed a meal together, chatting and laughing. I completely forgot the uneasiness I'd felt at first, and went into the family meeting without any lingering doubts. Finally, the big day arrived. The family meeting was held at a traditional restaurant in New York, which Sophie had reserved in advance. Shun's father had passed away, so only his mother attended the meeting. Our family arrived a little later than Shun's. Shun's mother, though elderly, stood tall with an air of elegance and grace.
Thank you for coming all the way to New York today. Since my husband has passed, I'll be representing our family alone. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for reserving such a lovely restaurant. I've been looking forward to today. It's a pleasure to meet you as well.
We exchanged greetings in a calm and polite atmosphere before taking our seats. The food looked exquisite and expensive, and I was too nervous to touch it at first.
I'd love to hear how Shun and Sophie met. Yes, and tell us what you love about each other too.
The mothers were excitedly chatting, and the conversation shifted in that direction.
We work at the same company.
Shun began with a smile.
I used to be assigned to a department that often sent me overseas, so I rarely had time for relationships. But when I settled into a position at the headquarters, that's when I met Sophie.
Since he mentioned last year that he'd been working abroad, I got curious and decided to ask him about it.
I'd heard from our boss that Sophie's hard work had significantly boosted the company's revenue. I couldn't help but take an interest in her dedication.
I'd already given up on romance and marriage, but Shun's someone I respect deeply, both as a person and a colleague. That's why I started to care about him.
Hearing about such a wonderful romance made me smile warmly. But that peaceful feeling was shattered in an instant.
Sophie is such an amazing person, and I think she's the only one I could ever marry. But there's one thing I just can't accept.
What?
Caitlin, you've spent your life until 40 without holding a proper job. What's the deal with that?
Shun's expression suddenly turned sharp as he glared at me, wiping away any trace of the earlier warmth. I was stunned into silence by the hostile atmosphere directed at me.
Well,
I met Caitlin before the family meeting because I wanted to get to know her, but I had no idea things were this bad.
hey, what gives you the right to talk about Caitlin like that?
Calm down. She's living in that dingy one-bedroom, and on top of that, you send her about $1,000 every month, don't you?
Sophie gasped, her face growing serious before she spoke.
How did you know that? Did you snoop through my bank account?
Of course I did. I'm going to be your husband, so it's only natural to do a background check. That's just common sense.
Shun spoke as though invading Sophie's privacy was entirely justified, suggesting he had full access to her financial details. I couldn't let the misunderstanding linger, so I spoke up. I might not be a regular employee, but I do work. I'm sorry if I gave the wrong impression, but my sister is an incredible person. But my words didn't seem to reach Shun.
Shut up. You're so shameless, having to be supported by your big sister.
He suddenly looked down on me with a condescending glare, and I involuntarily gasped.
Shun, that's enough. You didn't say anything like this when we visited Caitlin's studio.
I wasn't sure if she was really just a lazy bum then. I'm trying to wake her up. You should cut ties with a sister like that. You called her important, but she's just a leech, isn't she?
Mom was beside herself, on the verge of tears. Dad, shaking with anger, turned bright red. I could do nothing but bow my head, unable to find the words to respond. As the tense atmosphere froze the room, the sliding door suddenly opened and a young woman walked in.
Oh, there you are, Ashley.
Wait a minute. Who is this?
Shun, you had me so worried, not calling me at all.
The woman named Ashley, who suddenly appeared, jumped into Shun's arms as soon as she entered the room. Everyone present couldn't grasp the situation unfolding before them, while Shun spoke with a triumphant expression.
Sorry, Sophie, but I've decided to marry Ashley after all. I thought you had a decent amount of savings, but
What are you talking about?
aren't you ashamed of supporting a sister like that? I prefer younger women after all. Unlike you, Ashley stops doing anything I tell her to.
Ashley, standing next to Shun, looked down at us with an air of superiority and smiled.
Of course, I cut ties with my parents who opposed our marriage, just like Shun told me to, and I'm working hard to save money so I can marry him.
So that's the deal. We're leaving now. I had Ashley wait so I could make a decision at this family meeting. If you're going to keep defending your sister like that, Sophie, I don't need you anymore.
Feeling satisfied after saying what he wanted, Shun stood up to leave the venue. Wait a minute, please. Thinking things couldn't end like this, I tried to stop Shun and Ashley. Is it right for someone I've just met to say things that deny my income, my work, and even my character? And all based on assumptions they've made up themselves and believe to be true. I never thought I'd hear such terrible things from my dear sister's fiance, and I was left speechless. Involuntarily, I glanced over at Sophie and saw a face filled with anger I'd never seen before. Next to Shun, Ashley was giggling quietly. After several seconds, Sophie took a deep breath and said,
Caitlin is way richer than you know?
Hearing Sophie's words, Shun couldn't help but burst into laughter, holding his stomach.
Come on, give me a break. There's no way such a lie would work just because you still want to marry me.
He pointed at me, giving me a condescending look. His gaze was so hurtful that, Even though he was saying things that weren't true, I couldn't help but feel as if I were at fault. Still, I managed to counter with a trembling voice. I don't know about income levels, but there's just a misunderstanding about my profession. I'm an artist.
Probably an artist who can't sell any work, right? There are tons of so-called artists like that in this world. And that shabby room I visited before proves it.
It's true that my studio might be shabby, but...
Then tell me your name. If you're a famous artist, I'd recognize it, right?
Shun raised his voice, cutting me off as if determined to label me as a jobless so-called artist. I'm not an artist who shows my face or works under my real name. I work as an artist in an environment where I can publish my works anonymously, mainly through social media. If I reveal my pen name here, all the effort I've put into maintaining anonymity would be meaningless. However, I'd feel terrible if Sophie couldn't get married because of me. I don't show my face, so I didn't really want to say, but I go by the name Scarlet Mantis. I felt the atmosphere in the room freeze for a moment. I felt a bit embarrassed to say it myself, but Scarlet Mantis is an artist with over 10 million followers on social media. Not only do I receive commissions from within the US, but also from abroad, and famous influencers and artists have my paintings displayed in their rooms. Fans desire my very first piece of work, but I gave it to Sophie, who was my first supporter. Sophie still has that painting carefully framed and displayed in her room, and I visit to see it regularly.
Come on, that's a bad joke. Scarlet Mantis is a world-famous artist.
Wondering how to make him believe me, I quickly took out my sketchbook. The notebook contained notes and sketches of my previous works.
No way. So the first artwork by Scarlet Mantis displayed in Sophie's room is really?
Yes, I bought it because I was Caitlin's very first fan.
Sophie smiled, looking a bit proud. I told her I didn't want any money, but since I live at home and help take care of Mom and Dad, Sophie insisted on paying me something every month.
Caitlin was too modest to accept money directly, so I sent her money each month under the pretense of paying to admire her artwork every day.
You've got to be kidding. If that's true, this changes everything.
Shun's expression shifted.
Wait, Shun. Are you seriously going to believe what this woman is saying? She's obviously making this up because she's desperate to impress you, knowing you're next in line to be CO.
No, I'm actually a fan of Scarlet Mantis myself. I would have recognized the first artwork if I'd seen it. I just assumed it was a replica or something.
Shun suddenly began to panic. The confidence he had earlier was nowhere to be seen. Noticing Shun's slightly pale face, Sophie asked him,
Shun, are you seriously planning to marry this girl, Ashley? You seem to have shared quite a lot with her, even telling her about your candidacy for CO.
I hadn't known Shun was a candidate to become CO. The idea of Sophie losing such a promising partner made me a little worried.
Wait a second, let me think about this. It's true that I'm up for CO, okay? Maybe I said a few things to Caitlin that were over the line. But I was just worried about possibly ending up with a family member who seemed like, well, a freeloader.
Now recognizing me as Scarlet Mantis, Shun's attitude did a complete 180. He seemed eager to move forward with plans to marry Sophie. His selfishness was beyond belief.
Then how do you explain openly admitting to cheating?
Sophie asked, smiling as if something had snapped inside her.
Well.
The room fell silent for a moment, everyone caught off guard by Sophie's response. Then she turned to face Ashley directly, her expression serious.
Ashley, I have great news for you. I won't be marrying Shun, so you're free to go ahead and marry him yourself.
Wow, coming from such a smug old lady, that's harsh. But whatever, that was my plan from the start.
Ashley wore a victorious grin, but Sophie's next words were utterly shocking.
But you know, Shun will never become CEO. I don't know what kind of stories he's told you, but I doubt much of it is true.
Excuse me? What makes you think you know anything? Aren't you just a regular employee at his company? Stop being so pathetic, old lady.
Ashley laughed mockingly, convinced Sophie was making things up.
Sigh. The one who doesn't understand anything is you. A man who betrays his fiancée by bringing another woman to a family meeting? It wouldn't be surprising if he ends up betraying you too.
Turning to look at Shun, I saw that he was now utterly speechless. Sophie's words didn't seem to be off the mark, judging by his reaction. Noticing this, Ashley started to panic.
Wait, Shun? What's going on? Explain yourself. You told me you were next in line to be CEO and had been a department head overseas for years.
Sophie had mentioned before that Shun worked abroad, so I'd assumed he was very capable. But judging by her tone, perhaps that wasn't the case.
Since I'm no longer marrying him, I'll tell you everything. It's true that Shun worked in our company's overseas department.
Ashley gave a smug "see, I told you so" look. She even seemed a little relieved.
But you know, he wasn't a department head. He got addicted to overseas casinos and embezzled company funds, which led to him being reassigned to the headquarters where supervision was tighter.
What?
I found out about it a year into a relationship. But he seemed to have turned over a new leaf, worked hard, and earned my respect, so I decided to marry him.
Hearing this, Ashley glared sharply at Shun and asked,
So the whole story about being next in line to be CEO was a lie?
Not entirely. The truth is, the talk about being a candidate for CEO was about me.
Sophie said with a bitter expression, continuing her explanation.
But Shun contributed significantly to company revenues and repaid everything he embezzled. He even turned a big profit. To give him a chance to redeem himself, I recommended Shun for the CEO position.
Is that true? I wasn't told any of this. I thought it was all because of my own skills.
You really don't understand your position, do you? Who would want to make someone who embezzled company funds a CEO? I pleaded on your behalf because I wanted to give you, my future husband, a chance to make amends.
Hearing this, Shun looked even more devastated. Did he really believe it was all due to his own merit? If so, the misunderstanding was colossal.
So if you're not his wife, does that mean Shun will stay a low-level employee for the rest of his life?
Yes, that's why I said he won't be becoming CEO.
I'd believe that. Don't fall for it, Ashley. Then go ahead, call the CEO right now and ask.
Sophie, with a sigh of exasperation, replied, Fine, but once you hear the truth, leave this place immediately. She pulled out her phone. Setting it to speaker so everyone could hear, Sophie began dialing. Shun froze, stunned by Sophie's actions. He looked like he might collapse to his knees at any moment, a sight so pitiful it was almost laughable. From the look of things, it seemed Sophie's story was undeniably true.
Hello, this is Sophie. I need to speak with you about something. Do you have a moment?
Oh, Sophie, it's rare for you to call about something on your day off. What's the matter?
I'll get straight to the point. I'm calling to inform you that my engagement with Sean has been called off. I deeply apologize for all the trouble this has caused.
Sophie bowed her head, even though it was over the phone.
Sean, I refrained from saying anything because he was your choice, but I think this was the right decision.
The CEO let out an audible sigh, even over the phone.
Since he had once embezzled company funds, I had a background check conducted when he became a candidate for CEO. It turns out he's been involved with several other women. We just found out about this a short while ago.
Apparently, Shun's actions were fully known to the company.
So you conducted a background check. Multiple women, you say. One of those relationships came to light, which is why the engagement was called off.
As someone who could have been entrusted with the company, I needed to confirm whether he had truly changed. Sophie, your contributions to the company are undeniable, and it's true that we considered you as a candidate for the CEO position.
The CEO's appreciation for Sophie was evident.
Despite everything you've done for him, Sean repaid you with such behavior. If you choose to take legal action, let me know. We have evidence ready to support you.
The CEO's voice was gentle, conveying his desire to help Sophie however he could.
Thank you. I believe legal action will be necessary, so when the time comes, I would appreciate it if you could provide the evidence uncovered during your investigation.
Of course, it goes without saying, and Shun will be dismissed from the company. Sophie, as I've mentioned before, we want you to stay with us as a candidate for CEO. The company stands by you during this difficult time.
Thank you. I'll do my best. I'll see you at work.
After Sophie ended the call, Shun and Ashley stood frozen in place, speechless. Their faces showed the realization that they had lost everything.
What do you mean by multiple women? I only dated you because you said you were going to be the next CEO. Were you feeding the same line to all those other girls?
Ashley, wait. It's not like that. The CEO has a habit of exaggerating things, so that's why.
Excuse me? What am I supposed to believe about you now? You're just a middle-aged man who can't even handle a proper job or marriage. What use does anyone have for someone like you?
What? After all the shopping I did for you, how can you say that? I had money because I was successful at my job. You'd better pay me back every cent I spent on you.
Whenever things don't go his way, Shun instantly loses his temper and starts shouting. It was unbelievable to see a man in his 40s demanding money back from a woman in her 20s. And Ashley was right. Shun couldn't even make one of his partners happy, and even after being given a second chance by the company he betrayed, he ended up betraying them again in a different way. The truth was, Ashley had never cared about Shun as a person. She was only with him because he entertained her with his money. Watching Shun's delusions as a middle-aged man was downright pitiful.
Shun, do you really think that girl genuinely cares about you?
Shun, unwilling to face reality, looked at Sophie and asked hesitantly,
Well, Ashley's done everything I've asked her to. When I told her to cut ties with her family, she did it immediately. And when I said I wanted a baby, she agreed.
Oh, so you have a child?
Realizing his words had triggered a landmine, Shun froze, his expression stiff.
Well, since we're here, I might as well say it. Yes, Sophie wasn't interested in the idea at all, so.
Upon hearing this, Ashley burst out laughing, clutching her stomach. She was looking down on Shun with utter disdain. Shun seemed genuinely baffled about why Ashley found the situation so funny.
Of course it's all lies. Are you stupid? Do you seriously think I'd want to marry and have a baby with some middle-aged guy?
Then what was everything you said to me about? I paid for everything, including the medical bills when you said you were pregnant.
Because you kept throwing money at me like an idiot. I figured I'd milk you for everything you've got. And all that money? It's already gone.
It was clear that Shun and Ashley had been using and deceiving each other all along. Ashley had likely fabricated the pregnancy story to extract a significant amount of money from Shun. Shun, on the other hand, seemed to be experiencing the crushing despair of seeing everything he'd built crumble in an instant.
I've been scammed. Don't you realize what you're doing is marriage fraud?
Ashley rolled her eyes and replied,
Maybe so, but if you're not going to be the next CEO, I don't need to see you again. You're useless to me now. I'm leaving.
Ashley, wait. I still have what it takes to be CEO.
Seeing Shun crawling on the floor, desperately calling after Ashley, was a sight too pathetic to bear.
You've lost everything now. The family that could have made you happy, your status, and your job, all gone because you didn't value them.
Both Shun and Ashley seemed like people who had completely forgotten what it meant to be decent human beings. Ashley slapped Shun across the face, glared at everyone in the room, and walked out. After Ashley left, Shun approached Sophie and dropped to his knees, bowing deeply.
Please listen to me, Sophie. I've been wrong this whole time. I just never had a proper relationship before. So I wanted to gain experience with different people before settling down.
Both Sophie and I shuddered at such an absurd statement. Shun seemed determined to justify his cheating no matter what.
They say having feelings for multiple people helps keep your heart balanced. I was just spreading my emotions around. Honestly, you should be grateful I managed it so well.
What kind of logic is that?
The one I truly love is you, Sophie. That's why I arranged this family meeting, didn't I? You can't tell me that doesn't show my sincerity, right?
Shun's self-serving arguments made it clear he wasn't truly remorseful.
Can you stop acting like you're doing me some kind of favor? I've been sincere and committed to you all along. Even the CEO hesitated to consider you for the position, but he still seriously thought it over for your sake. After trampling all over people's feelings, this is what you come up with.
Shun couldn't handle Sophie's rational argument and started shouting again.
That's why. I've worked hard to make up for my mistakes, haven't I?
Working to atone for your crimes is the bare minimum you're supposed to do.
She was absolutely right. Despite committing the serious mistake of embezzling company funds, Shun had been given forgiveness and a chance to redeem himself by many people. Yet, he overestimated his abilities, believing he had achieved everything on his own, and ended up disappointing and hurting others even further.
Caitlin, you understand me, don't you?
With a sudden look of realization, Shun turned to me, smirking as he proposed something.
That's it. If I become Sophie's husband, I can use my overseas experience to sell your paintings to a bigger audience. You'd make a lot more money. Wouldn't that make you happy?
Shun, please stop. I sell my paintings to people who tell me they need my art, people who say it brings them comfort. Unable to tolerate his assumption that money was my only goal, I raised my voice slightly in response. I don't sell my work just to anyone, and someone who has hurt my sister so deeply doesn't deserve to have anything to do with my art. Apparently stung by my strong words, Shun's attitude changed again, and he started shouting angrily.
Don't get cocky. Just because you're famous on social media doesn't mean anything in the real world. You're just a social misfit who can't even get married.
That's enough.
Shun's mother, who had been silent until now, shouted angrily at him. Later, I learned from her that she had briefly fainted earlier when the topics of Shun's embezzlement and infidelity came up, overwhelmed by the shock.
I've raised you as a single parent, doing everything I could to avoid shame. All I ever wanted was for you to be happy. And now, after finally hearing about a potential marriage, this is what you give me. Enough already.
Mom,
Shun stammered, visibly panicked.
As of today, I'm cutting ties with you. The fact that you followed the same path as your father. I can hardly believe it, but this is reality. Take responsibility and atone for your actions.
Wait, Mom. Don't leave me alone. You can't cut ties with me. You're joking, right?
Just as Shun reeled from his mother's words, our dad stepped forward, moving closer to him with a determined expression.
Shun, that's enough. I won't allow you to marry my daughter. You're the kind of person who hurts others without a second thought. From now on, stay away from my daughters and don't ever show your face again.
Even though he had been silent up until now, our dad stood in front of Shun with an anger I'd never seen before. Seeing his clenched fists trembling with rage made me feel deeply sad. I knew how much he had been looking forward to today.
Sir, please listen to me. I realize now how important Sophie is to me after everything that happened today.
Even at this point, Shun began insisting how much Sophie mattered to him. Sophie let out a deep sigh, turning her face away. Hearing Shun's audacious words seemed to make our dad even angrier.
No matter what excuses you make, it's meaningless, and you have no right to call me your father-in-law.
Raising his voice even louder, our dad shouted furiously. I'd never seen him so commanding before.
Leave this place immediately. If you don't, I'm afraid I might lose my temper and hit you.
My dad was furious as he had never been before because of the disrespect of his two daughters. It was also the first time I'd heard him shout like that. Seeing our dad like this, Shun started trembling and even began to cry. Unable to believe things weren't going his way, he acted as if he were the victim. It was pitiful to see him offering excuse after excuse, knowing full well that nothing he said could change anything now. Shun's mother sincerely apologized to us, made Shun apologize as well, and the gathering ended on that note. The stormy series of events left us standing in silence for a while. This disastrous family meeting was something you wouldn't even come across in a novel. Sophie and Shun broke off their engagement, and Sophie filed a claim for damages against him. Thanks to the background check conducted by the CO, contact information for several women Shun had deceived was obtained. The women, upon learning of each other's situations, shared information about Shun and collectively decided to file claims for damages against him. I made an agreement with Ashley to pretend she hadn't heard me reveal my pen name at the meeting. It was also revealed that Shun had been addicted to casinos in the past and, after returning to the USA, had continued indulging in various forms of gambling, including slot machines, horse racing, and boat racing. This had left him drowning in debt. Despite calling me a freeloader, he himself was buried in debt. Shun had targeted wealthy women or those in corporate positions, using lies to make them pay off the debts he incurred from gambling. His total debt exceeded $1 million, and he manipulated women into believing he would marry them, even making them cut ties with their families who opposed their relationships. The women who severed family ties lost their homes and had nowhere to return to. Later, Shun's mother revealed that Shun's father had also been mired in gambling debt, had numerous relationships with women to extract money, and divorced shortly after Shun was born. The claim that his father had passed away was a lie he told before marriage, fearing that the truth would ruin his chances of marrying into a respectable family. Now, burdened with his debts and multiple claims for damages, Shun was fired from his job. He was also being prosecuted for embezzling company funds to fuel his gambling addiction. The damages from his fraudulent actions weren't likely to end with monetary compensation alone. Eventually, Shun was charged with embezzlement and sentenced to prison. Had he properly faced Sophie and the company and grown as a person, none of this would have happened. Unsurprisingly, he was disowned by his family and will likely live a lonely life from here on out. With a criminal record, it would be hard for him to find a job, and he would have to pay the damages with whatever income he managed to earn. A harsh life surely awaited him. Although I felt hurt and dejected by how my profession was belittled during this ordeal, I also felt it was ultimately a blessing in disguise that my beloved sister was able to separate from Shun. As the CEO had hinted, Sophie was appointed as the next CEO. She was the first female CEO in the company's history, and there were high hopes for her. Sophie dedicated herself to creating a more supportive workplace for women, focusing on reforms for maternity leave, parental leave, and the promotion of menstrual leave policies. As a result, the number of female applicants tripled last year compared to the previous year, and the company gained more talented employees, something Sophie was thrilled about. The company's revenue was also steadily climbing. Though our parents were exhausted by this ordeal, seeing Sophie work diligently and face forward inspired them to do the same. After retiring, they had been staying at home, but now they were going on trips together. As for me, this experience motivated me to increase my interactions with people, so I decided to join a cooking class. While I could already cook to some extent, I wanted to make more varied dishes for my parents to enjoy. At the cooking class, I met a man in his 40s and we are now dating. He is understanding of my struggles with communication, and as we went on dates through the cooking class, I grew to like him more. After the incident with Shun, I was scared that revealing my profession would change how people perceived me. So for now, I've kept it a secret and feel fortunate to be in a relationship with someone who accepts me for who I am.